Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Monday. It's February the 10th. It's just a little bit before noon, but I'm going to go ahead and do our chart lesson today and wrap this up. This thing is just, we're hung in this tight range, and there's not much going on, and I'm done early today, so I'm going to go ahead and do the video and wrap it up. This is a great example of of a tight range, and really the range is from about 86 and a quarter or so to about, I'd say you could call it 93 basically. So, 5 points or so, not a big range. Most of it's been within about a 4 point range, but I'd say the whole range is maybe 6 or 7 points there. But the majority of the price action has been within about a 4 point range all day. And the best trades are going to be shorts off the highs or longs off the low, but you got to wait on you got to wait on the retest. I drew this one. Um, we had a retest here. I'll explain this. We turned down, but we still didn't have a new high. Notice that we went to make a new high before we headed back to the other side, and we had a break of this little channel and a new low, and then we headed up, and we've had a break of this channel, but we don't have a new high yet either, so you got to be real careful going short. You might get trapped. You want a really good setup. So a couple of things I wanted to discuss today before I go over the trades. There's not a whole lot of them, so it won't take long, but something that came up in some questions and things. So a couple of things I just wanted to go over because we hadn't had a chance to talk about them in a while. I tend to forget that, I talk about them, but we always have new people coming in, and they don't always see all the old videos, so they don't hear me say some of these things. But one of the main things that you got to remember is that we are not pattern traders. Just because you see a pattern that we talk about that works really well doesn't mean you take it. You're looking for the patterns to set up at specific places, following the rules, and then you got to take everything into account. And, just because you get a second entry long or a second entry short doesn't mean you take it. It has to be in the right context. It has to be at the right place. And it's pretty simple to keep up with that stuff for the most part. But, sometimes they can be tricky. So on a day like today, your best trades are really going to be shorts off these highs once it's obvious we're in a trading range, or longs off these lows once it's obvious. And if you take a trade any other time, it's suspect. And really the only way to keep yourself on the right track is to draw these channels. And just like right here, I just gave you an example. There was a second entry short that just triggered, and it could go ahead and work, but we've got this break of this channel, and we don't have a new high yet. And so I'm guessing that we're probably going to come up here and at least make a new high before we turn down again. And that's what it looks like is going to happen. Looks like they've trapped people to the short side now. And now maybe they'll run it up. We'll just have to see. We could just stay hung up in this trading range just like we kind of did here. And once you realize you're in this right here, this is kind of no man's land. Just stay out of it. But the only way you could trade that is just to blindly buy the lows or blindly sell the highs, because there's not enough room to scalp out of there otherwise. And you see eventually one fails. There's some clues that we were going to go lower here that we can talk about in a minute, but you're still taking a risk because you don't know exactly when that's going to happen. So but let's break out a little bit, talk about the trades. I'll show you what I saw, and you can see as you back out a little more it looks totally different. But we had a couple of legs down this morning early, and by the time I came in, we were kind of in this little channel working up. Really, the first opportunity I saw to enter was right here, and the only reason I like this trade is because it was a failed second entry short. We had this channel working down. We really had a break right here. We closed outside it and then made a new low. So, but it was, it was kind of, it could have gone either way. It could have been like that, and then you don't have the new low. But I'm guessing it was off the closes here, because that was holding most of the closes all the way down. Then you finally get some closes outside. You make a new low and it reverses. But either way, you got a failed second entry short here. Notice the new low. You're pulling back. There's your first entry. You pull back your second entry, and this tripped up a bunch of people. Some people got short here, and because it was a second entry short, and it's a, they were thinking go short right there. But let me show you this setup, and this is the way I explained this. Look at these two bars here. That's a bullish bar, and then this is an inside bar that has a little bit of a red body, but for the most part it's an inside bar that's mostly stem and hardly any body. That is a horrible setup to be going short right there, particularly the fact that you just came off a new low and you made a higher high here than this last toe. We couldn't get above that before. Now we went way up here. And then you get this setup that's not very bearish, and guess what? It breaks lower and it just traps people and it goes a little bit higher. So I like that trade for a second entry long, or a failed second entry short that turned into a long. There's no reason to go short there. And people always ask me that, how come you didn't take the short? Well, there's not a short. So you're better off to say, hey, let's just wait and see what happens and see if we get a better entry, which would be the trap, and then the trap triggers, and of course, if you're in the short and fighting a bad trade, then of course you probably don't see the trap. So that's how that works. And this is a failed second entry short, and it traps traders that aren't very experienced, that don't realize that that's kind of a little congestion area right there. And it's really kind of like a breakout pullback long too, because you got a kind of a double top right across here, and we break higher and it pulls back. And it doesn't go very far, but it gets enough to get your scalp out of it, and then you get a trap to the upper side, or you get your reversal. You get your break of the trend channel. You go higher, but even more importantly than that, you didn't quite make a new high here, but notice this high, and then we tested it once more, twice more. Anytime you test something twice and it doesn't work, prices are probably going to go the other way. So just go short right there, easy scalp, and it's headed back the other way. And then guess what? You get another failed second entry short, so to speak here. You got a new low, you're coming back first entry, pull back second entry, and again, it's a horrible setup. There's just nothing really happening there. This is kind of no man's land. You think prices are probably going to go lower here because we're coming off the high side, but there's not a decent enough setup to go short. That might have worked. I don't even know if that worked. If you entered, your entry would have been 1790, and it gets to 80. So that's a 4-tick failure, and that's a sure trap. So when it goes higher, just have your stop right there. It's an easy scalp. And guess what? You go get the new high that you were looking for here to begin with, and then it's headed to the other side. It takes a little while. People are thinking long here, and you get a few traps both ways here, and this is just kind of hung up, congestion, and look how congested looking that whole thing. We're swinging back and forth to both sides of the EMA. Look how flat the EMA is right across there. Just stay out of that. Like I said, there's some clues here. Notice the high. We got a new high here compared to all these others. Then you got a little lower high, then a double top, then another little lower double top, then another little lower one. That's a signal that we're probably going to break lower, and this is like a little breakout pullback long that fails. Just go, and you can go short right there. It's a breakout pullback short, and you got this channel now kind of working down. You draw this trend line, and so it's right off that trend line. You might have waited on this one, or you might have just used a limit order, but that was a fairly easy trade on the way down there. And you might have even thought about entering here, but I think it was too risky because there's a good chance we hit here and bounce again. So you really need to wait for more confirmation, which came right here. And so that's why I like that one. And then we get to the bottom. An aggressive trader might have gone long right here, but I think you're better off to wait on a little break lower, which came there. So that's your second entry long off the low. It pulls back yet again. So it might have tripped you up, but then you get the failed second entry short, and so either add on or get back in right there, or that might have even been your first trade because you were wanting to be less aggressive and waiting on the sure thing. And it takes a little while, but it all works out. And this is like a breakout pullback long right here. Notice those, if you drag this line down here, just to make it easier to see, notice how we holding prices right there. That's strong resistance, but it gets through, and it kind of pulls back and tests it again. It actually was using that. That's kind of the what I call the thin area, where it was acting as support, and then it kind of acts as resistance, and it breaks through and pulls back and then goes higher. So it's like a breakout pullback long, basically. Um, and it's coming off that trend line again. You know, it's an easy to see spot trend line right there. No reason you can't see that. And you know prices are kind of going back and forth here. And that was really the last trade I saw today. And, you know, you would think you couldn't make much out of that. But, you know, if you just get a point off of a couple of, you know, 3 or 4 of those, you can make 4 or 5 points on a day where prices doesn't even move but 4 or 5 points. And I know that some people have done even better than that. I got a couple of emails from one guy. I think he last word I heard he had 11 points. And that was before we had this last couple of moves here. So you can make money like this. And personally, you'll hear me say this a lot. I like these kind of days because they're so predictable. They're just really predictable. You know what's going to happen before it happens. And if you draw these shorter term trend lines, it keeps you on the right side. And for whatever reason, there's no news today or anything. I don't think we have any news at all today. So not much happening. You just kind of got to wait. And, you know, we may break higher and go higher here eventually, or we may break lower and go lower. But my guess is we'll probably hang around in here at least until there's some reason to believe something different's going to happen. Just stay with the channel. I mean, the range here. So. And that's really it for today. Not much else you can say about this. This is where it gets really dangerous, and sometimes right in the middle you got to be careful. The better entries are off the highs up here, and you can see how you could have sold this high right here, and you would have got a trade out of it. But it's better to wait for the break of the channel, and either the failed second chance to go higher or else a new high, just like you got here, and you got a failed opportunity to go high twice there. So there's lots of little nuances to this stuff, and you got to be thinking about it all. And it's a lot to think about early on. So that's why we tell you just sim trade, and don't worry about being wrong or right. If you're sim trading, if you see a setup that you think is right, just take it. Don't question it. Take it, and don't worry about it. You're either going to be, and just let the trade play out. Don't try to manage it. Let it play out by the rules, either be wrong or right. And then go back and study your work at the end of the day and figure out, hey, when you're right, why was it right? Why did it work? Did I really read it right, or did I get lucky? Because sometimes you'll get lucky too. Somebody sent me a trade where they went short right here, and there's not a very good setup there. And it worked, but I think it was low. It's too risky going short down here at this low, because the lows might have actually been right there, and it may not have broke through, and it might have bounced, and you have a losing trade. So figure out why you were right, and if you were right, figure out why. Make sure you weren't just lucky, and if you were wrong, figure out what you did wrong. And I hear a lot of times, people will send me an email and they say, hey, did I just get unlucky here and it was a good setup and it failed, or was I wrong? Well, if your trade failed, you were wrong, because the price action is never wrong. We just read it wrong. And sometimes it's easier to get tricked. Don't get me wrong. But the price action doesn't lie. Whatever it's doing is what it's doing. And if you get a trade wrong, you were just wrong. And trying to think, there was something else I wanted to talk about today. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. I get a lot of requests about the live trades, and I don't do very many of them. I try to do some every so often, and it never fails. As soon as I do one, and then somebody will say, well, why won't you show us some losing trades? Well, there's a couple of reasons. If I don't record many trades. I make my money trading, not as a teacher. There's not much money in the teaching, at least not the way I do it, because I don't charge you a lot of money. I make it affordable. I charge you just enough to keep the tire kickers away, so to speak. So I don't make a lot of money as a teacher. I do that because I enjoy doing it, and it's more of a hobby, and it helps my trading as well. So I make my money as a trader. And you don't want to be trading live and sitting here trying to record all this stuff. I don't have time to do that. I don't want to risk my livelihood doing that. So usually the only time I record a trade is on a day like today when I'm done early and and I'm sitting here and I have a chance and all of a sudden I see a great setup. Well, I'm only going to try to record something that I think is a sure thing. If I think there's a chance it's going to be a loser, or if it's a questionable trade, I won't record it. I only record the ones that look like, hey, it's a sure thing. So I'll be honest, I don't record many losing trades. And I'm not going to say I don't have losing trades because I do, but you'd probably be surprised and you probably wouldn't believe me if I told you how many losing trades that I don't have, because I don't have a lot of losing trades. But to say I never lose would be a lie, because I do have losing trades. So don't take that the wrong way. Uh, but I don't record many because usually when I'm recording one, I'm relaxed, I'm sitting here and I see something that's so obvious. I say, hey, I've got time. I'm going to record that. And so I'll set it up and they just, they don't fail. So I don't get any losers. I mean, it's like trying to say, okay, let's go out and force a losing trade. That's what you almost have to do when I'm in that kind of situation. So there's just not going to be a lot of recorded losing trades. If and when I record one and it lose, I'll promise you I will post it for you that want to see those. I know that people think that will help them. Um, and there usually is something to learn from a losing trade. But I can explain all that to you, just like I usually do, like the guy that took this trade. I explained that trade. If you took that, it could have easily been a loser. There was another one over here that he took that was a loser that I explained to you why you don't take that trade. So I'm talking about trades, even though I may not point it out and say, hey, here's a losing trade. I could just as easily circle that and say it was a losing trade, but what good does that do anybody? You want to see what I was thinking when I took the trade, or what the proper thinking was. Even if I didn't take it, I want to tell you what the proper thinking is, not what you should be thinking when you're losing. So I get it, though. You want to see losing trades, but trust me when I tell you that's not going to help your trading as much as understanding why you don't take those trades and how you should be thinking when those kind of trades set up. And just like here, I guarantee there were a lot of losing trades in there. And the reason is just unless you went short right here, you needed to avoid this, because once it started hanging up here, and I think that trade still might have worked if you entered there. 91 and a quarter. That was a 4-tick failure. It would have eventually worked if you left your stop where it's supposed to be, which is above there. Prices never got above there, so it would have eventually worked. But once you got hung up down here, if I would have traded that, I would have waited, and as soon as I could get a tick or two out of it, I would have taken it and just waited to see what happens. But you really don't want to enter there, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bars stacked up there in a row that are all pretty much overlapping. In other words, when I say overlapping, all bars, even coming down in the trend and going up, they're overlapping. But look what's happening here, where the majority of them are stacked up side by side. That's what I'm talking about when I say, congestion and really being overlapping. And you see that second entry short failed, and we're going to try to make the new high. So that's why I draw these trend channels here, because they tell you something. And if you follow the rules, you wouldn't have been going short there, and you wouldn't have got trapped short there, because we don't have a new high yet. Yeah, it could have gone and fell straight down, and you might have missed a good trade, but better to miss a trade than to get suckered in on the wrong side. So I hope that makes sense to you. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, and not much else to talk about. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.